These days, if you're looking for a new camcorder with infrared night vision, your choices are rather limited. Sony only has one model left with NightShot, their most expensive handycam, which sells for $1,600. And Canon has several professional camcorders with night vision, the least expensive of which is the XA10, which sells for $2,000. So the only real affordable choices out there for a new camcorder with infrared night vision is the Bell Howell DNV900HD, and they also have a newer model with night vision, the DNV16HDZ, which I will also be reviewing soon. But first, let's take a look at the DNV900HD since it came out first. This was introduced in 2010, and you can still find it either brand new or you can find used ones now on eBay for a rather affordable price. Here's the Bell Howell Full HD 1080p camcorder, model DNV900HD. In regions outside of North America, it is also sold as the Benq DV-S21. Same thing as the Bell & Howell, just with a different name. Same exact features and design, just different name for the same thing. On the side here, it advertises various features, including still photos up to 16 megapixels, infrared night vision, touch panel, dual power source, 2 SD card slots, and multi-shot. Now, of course, the infrared night vision is going to be the main reason anyone is interested in this model. On the front here, you can see the infrared illuminator LED, and on top is the flash. There is no visible LED, only infrared. And there's the little fixed focus lens. You get an adjustment for either close-up focus or more distant focus. And also on the front is a little red LED that flashes when it's recording. You get your hand strap here, which of course lets everybody know that you're using a high-definition camcorder. On the top here is the built-in microphone, the still photo shutter button, and your zoom control. It's 4 times digital zoom, it's not optical zoom. This also doubles as the volume control when you're playing back videos. On the back there's also some buttons here. There's a menu button, a button to switch between camcorder, still camera, and voice recorder modes. Of course, your recording start-stop button, a playback button, and a D-pad, which also serves various other purposes. You open up the LCD to turn it on, but you also get a dedicated power button here on the side. Here's the panel of the inputs and outputs. You get USB, mini HDMI output, and regular composite AV output. Now this is a touchscreen, but you do not need to use the touchscreen if you don't want to, because it has redundant controls on the back here using that D-pad to go through the menus, or you can just use the touchscreen to go through the menus. I won't go through everything through the menus here, but you do get your choice of resolution. FHD is 1920 by 1080, 30 frames per second. HD is the default, it's 1280 by 720 at 30 frames per second. WVGA is 848 by 480 at 60 frames per second, and web is 320 by 240 at 30 frames per second. You get your standard settings for things like white balance, special effects like sepia or black and white, metering, center or spot, backlight compensation. Night mode does not seem to work on this camera. I think it's supposed to slow down the shutter speed, but whenever I turn it on I can't see any difference in the video. Motion detection starts the camera recording automatically whenever it sees motion in front of the lens. And you get exposure compensation, which is also available through the D-pad on the back here by pushing left or right. You can adjust the exposure up to +2 or -2. You get similar settings in the menu for still photos. You can adjust the resolution up to 16 megapixels, but of course that's interpolated because this camera only has a 5 megapixel image sensor on it. And you get your setup menu for things like date and time, turning the beeps on or off, setting it for NTSC or PAL, and so on and so forth. Also inside the LCD cavity is the built-in speaker, and this thing here that says H.264 MOV format advanced dual camera. That's actually a mistake. This does record in H.264 format, but in AVI files. And I found that causes problems if you use a Macintosh, because no matter what I tried, either QuickTime Player, iMovie HD, iMovie 11, or Final Cut Pro, they all refuse to work correctly with the AVI files that this camera records. I tried also MPEG Stream Clip, which is supposed to be able to convert any video format into something that will work on a Macintosh. That didn't work either. It just came up with a blank screen and I can only hear the audio. I also tried VLC Media Player. That will play the files recorded by this camera just fine, but its transcoding feature did not work correctly. When I tried to convert it into a format that would work in iMovie, the video came out very juddery and it would cut off too soon before this clip was supposed to end. So if you're using a Macintosh, you may run into some trouble getting these video files recorded by this camera to work. Although if you're using a PC, you should be just fine. Windows Media Player was able to play the AVI files just fine, and they also worked fine in Sony Vegas for video editing. On the bottom here is the tripod mount and dual SD card slots, which each support up to 32 gigs SDHC cards. It also has a small amount of built-in memory, but not very usable. It's only good for recording just over a minute of video at the lowest resolution. But you can use even a rather small SD card, say like 2 or 4 gigabytes, and have plenty of recording time because this camcorder records videos at a rather low bit rate. In 720p mode, it only records at 4 megabits, which means the files come out rather small. You can fit a lot of video onto even a rather small SD card. Over on this side is the battery door. Just push that and it pops open. It can run on either 2 AA batteries or a lithium-ion NP40 rechargeable battery pack. Now the thing is, if you use AA batteries, it cannot use the night vision mode. That feature is disabled, maybe because they thought the infrared LED would cause too much power drain on those batteries. But you can find these NP40 batteries very cheaply, only about $3 or $4 for the generic ones. So they're easy to stock up on and they work pretty good. You can also power the camera through the USB port here, but I found that you cannot turn on the infrared LED while recording. It'll say that the battery is low and it'll shut off. But when powered by USB, you can turn on the infrared LED before you start recording, and then it'll work just fine. And the way you turn on the infrared mode is you hit up on the D-pad and you hit up again to turn it back to normal mode. And the camcorder remains sensitive to infrared light even when night vision mode is not selected, because Bell Howell did not put an infrared blocking filter in the lens. Now one downside is that while this camera will run on USB power, it will not recharge the battery through the USB power adapter. You have to take the battery out and use a separate battery charger. Now these are also very cheap and easy to find. You can find generic Chinese ones on eBay for about $4. I paid a little more to get a slightly higher quality one from a US seller. This one cost me about $7 on eBay. Here's the Bell & Howell next to the 2 camcorders I use most often to make my YouTube videos, the JVC GZ MS230 and the Canon FS200. It's about the same size. The JVC is a little bit taller and the Canon is a little bit longer. And I would say the Bell & Howell actually has the best hand strap. This one on the JVC is just a joke. And the Canon is a little bit thinner than this one, so that's one nice thing about it. On the front you can see the difference in the lenses. This one does not have any lens cover, but the actual lens in the middle there is very small and rather deeply recessed, so it's not too likely to be damaged or scratched. So that's about it for the Bell & Howell DNV900HD camcorder. Now let's take a look at some sample videos recorded using it. This is a quick test of the Bell & Howell DNV900HD camcorder with infrared night vision, which I have enabled right now, which is why the image is black and white and very grainy. But considering the low lighting here, I think it's doing a okay job. If I look over here, all that you're seeing is the illumination of the infrared light That's actually a pretty bright LED. It's not bad at all. You can get a good comparison here. This is what night vision turned on, and this is night vision turned off. So again, looking down here, can't see much of anything. But when I turn night vision on, you can see everything there clearly because of the infrared light. And a more wide angle shot showing beyond the range of the infrared light. That's with night vision turned off. So you can see even beyond the range of the infrared light. The night vision adds a lot of electronic gain to the image, which makes it very grainy, of course, but certainly helps you see a lot more. Of course, it's going to be black and white, but that's normal for night vision. And here's the same scene of bright lighting in normal mode, of course. People say that this camcorder turns black objects into purple in the normal mode, and that is true because it's not filtering out the infrared. So even if you do not turn on the night vision mode, this camera is still sensitive to infrared light. So you can use an external illuminator, and even in normal mode it will be able to pick up the infrared light. So for example, that speaker grill is not purple as it looks, it's actually black. And unlike the vast majority of Sony NightShot cameras, it does not disable the automatic exposure in night vision mode. So you can take night vision videos during the daytime in bright lighting and it won't be washed out, because the auto exposure does function even in night vision mode. So you can use something like an infrared pass filter and do daytime recordings with the night vision mode enabled, and they'll come out just fine. And the audio quality is pretty darn good too. It's only mono, of course, but it's a very good sounding microphone. So I just wanted to do a test video on this Bell Howell DNV900HD night vision camera. Here's the car stereo test to see if the microphone distorts when I turn it up. Train crossing the road here. FM is actually playing a light song. One unusual thing is that the night vision makes the LCD indicators in my Passat's instrument cluster almost invisible. You can hardly see the numbers that are on there. And if I turn on the car's lights to make the backlighting go on, as you can see there, it's still just barely visible when I turn on the infrared light. Now here's some low light condition driving. It's not totally dark, but it's about half an hour after sunset. We'll see what effect the night vision does here in this little darker area here. You can see it really brings out all the details that get lost in the normal mode. There's normal mode again and night vision. So clearly this camera, the night vision mode, is much more than just turning on the infrared light. It really electronically boosts the gain of the whole image. So even what the infrared light cannot illuminate, because after all it's just going to reflect off the glass here anyway, it helps bring out the details that get lost in the normal mode. It's about 10 minutes later now, even darker, and obviously have the night vision turned on. You can still see what's going on. You can still read the road signs. Even the button copy signs are fairly visible, at least in the LCD. That's what it looks like without night vision. Nice blue sky. The sky is almost totally dark now. Let's see what effect the night vision has, if any. Well, it certainly brightens up my headlights on the road. I suppose it will make the road signs more visible. Let's see. Well, a little bit. So it's not going to work miracles once it starts getting totally dark, but it certainly does help brighten things up at the expense of making everything a lot more grainy. Here's a more long distance test at night. There's a car about, I'm going to say 50 feet away, and if I turn on the night vision, let me zoom in, you can see the Jeep. But if I turn it off, you can only see a reflection of the taillight. So that's a little more long distance test of the night vision. Now you do also get an exposure adjustment on the D-pad, left or right. I have it turned all the way down now, and I'll gradually turn it up with the control, and you'll see how it makes the trees become visible when it's all the way up. Now I'll go back to the normal setting. Now I'll go back down to -2. So that is another way to brighten up the image, in addition to just turning on the night vision, is to use the exposure adjustment. Okay, there's two white plastic shelves down there in the distance. You can just barely make them out. And I got out the yardstick and measured it. The far corner of the second shelf is exactly 15 feet from where I'm standing right now. So now I'll turn on the night vision, and the first shelf is bright and clear, the whole thing, and you can see about half of the second shelf there. You can just barely make out the far corner of the second shelf, so that's 15 feet away using the night vision, and that's back to normal. So it certainly makes quite a bit of difference. Now this camcorder's lack of an infrared filter over the lens causes some strange things, as I've already shown. I just noticed in my car, normally all the lighting on the dashboard is red, but if I look down here at the heater controls, they look purple on this camera, even though they're red in real life. And I think the difference is these use little light bulbs behind here to light up these controls, because there's a little blue indicator here that needs to show up as blue, and they just wanted to make that easier to do. Instead of putting a little blue LED in there, they just decided to put a light bulb in there and use a multicolored filter. But for some reason that comes out as purple on the camcorder, even these little things down here for the recirculating lever. So that's just something interesting I noticed in terms of how this camcorder is picking up the lighting. The LEDs come out as red, but the light bulbs come out as purple. Now this camcorder's ability to see in the dark really seems to depend on how light of an object you're trying to aim at. I have several recycling bins here, and the lightest one picks up the best, while the darker ones, the blue and the green ones, you can barely see at all unless I move my hand there to reflect off the LED, and you can kind of see them down there. So the lighter objects really show up a lot better than the darker objects when using the night vision. Here's a field of view comparison between the different modes of the Bell Howell camcorder. This is full HD 1920 by 1080. Of course, scaled down to 720p for YouTube. And here is 720p mode, 1280 by 720. You can see it has a much wider field of view than the 1080p mode. This is WVGA mode, 848 by 480 resolution. You can see once again it has a smaller field of view, just like the 1080p mode. And finally, this is web mode, 320 by 240 resolution, 4:3 aspect ratio. Appears to have the same field of view as the 720p mode, just with the sides cut off to fit the 4:3 aspect ratio. And one other caveat of the 1080p mode is that the digital zoom does not work. I'm moving my finger back and forth on the control and it's not doing anything right now. But if we switch down to 720p mode, here is the 4x digital zoom. You cannot use the night vision mode when taking still photos on this camcorder, but you can use the flash, and it's a very powerful and bright xenon strobe flash. I'll show you an example here of a still photo taken exactly where I'm standing right now in this same lighting condition using the flash.